So today our topic is the further discussion about the rhinosinusitis, especially the chronic rhinosinusitis and nasal polyps. So myself, Dr. Rahul Patel, I am assistant professor in the Department of ENT, Government Medical College, Surat. The specific learning objectives of today's lecture is that everybody whomsoever is seeing this lecture must be able to define what is CRS and what is nasal polyps. They should be able to understand the pathophysiology of CRS and nasal polyposis, and they should be able to learn the management of CRS and the nasal polyposis. So this is just a revision of our previous lecture. The definition include the symptoms. There are two types of symptom, primary and additional symptom. Primary symptoms includes nasal blockage and nasal discharge, and additional symptoms include facial pain and olfactory dysfunction. So the patient to be defined as rhinosinusitis should have either two primary symptoms or one primary symptom and one or more additional symptoms. So these are regarding the symptom, and they should be more than 3 weeks to be called as a chronic rhinosinusitis. In addition to the symptom, the patient should also have a few signs which will be evaluated either by endoscopy or by CT scan or by both. The endoscopic signs include the nasal polyps or mucopurulent discharge in the middle meatus or edema or all. And CT scan findings include mucosal changes within the osteomeatal complex and or sinuses. So, for the chronic rhinosinusitis to be defined, patient should have symptoms and signs, and for the sign it needs to be evaluated by either endoscopy or CT scan or by both, and the duration of the symptoms should be more than 3 weeks. This is a coarse classification of chronic rhinosinusitis. Based on the presence or absence of the nasal polyposis, the CRS can be further divided into CRS with nasal polyposis and CRS without nasal polyposis, and both the entity are further classified into localized, diffuse and with some systemic disease. These are some of the etiological mechanisms for chronic rhinosinusitis. Now, from last many decades, there have been many studies to know the etiology of the chronic rhinosinusitis along with the nasal polyposis, but till date, not a single study have concluded a single etiology. So there are many mechanism has been proposed, and nowadays the most acceptable 4 etiological mechanisms include the staphylococcal enterotoxins, the fungal antigens, the biofilm and eosinophilic mucus. This is a pathophysiology of the chronic rhinosinusitis. Here you can see that there is a healthy sinus mucosa homeostasis. There may be some environmental triggers. There may be some unknown host and environmental factors. Because of the environmental factors, there is imbalance between some inflammatory mediators, and because of that there is local inflammation and edema of the nose or sinonasal mucosa, which leads to chronic rhinosinusitis. Now, whenever there is any etiological mechanism present, which we have discussed in the previous slide, there is activation of the innate immune defect, and because of that the barrier is compromised. So this may be because of the bacterial biofilms and abnormal adaptive immune responses. In response to that, there is a pathogen specific T and B cell activation, and that leads to sinonasal epithelial dysfunction, and that dysfunction means there may be breach in the continuity of the epithelium, there may be dysfunction of the ciliary beating movement, there may be edema in the stroma in the subepithelial region. Any of this damage we will term as sinonasal epithelial dysfunction, and because of all of this there is failure to repair and resolution of the inflammation, and there is a tissue damage by the cells and cytokines. So if you see this important thing, there is damage not only by the cells, but there is a damage also because of the immunity of the patient himself. So our management depends on these two things. We have to manage the hyperactivated immunity as well as we have to manage this cell damage. Now, pathology of the CRS with nasal polyposis. What happens after that pathophysiology which we have seen in the previous slide? There is intense edematous trauma in the sinonasal epithelium. So, in the epithelium, respiratory epithelium, which we call it as a ciliated columnar epithelium. So, within the stroma of the epithelium, there will be intense edema because of the pathophysiology which we have discussed in the previous slide. Second is albumin deposition in the epithelium, pseudocyst formation. All these three things will occur in the epithelium. Now, what happened in the subepithelial layer? There will be perivascular inflammatory cell infiltration, most commonly the eosinophilic infiltration. So, because of that, it appears that this is associated with a typical helper T cell, which is type 2, and because of that, there is a eosinophilic inflammation with high interleukin and eosinophilic cationic protein concentrations in the polyps. So, because of all this inflammatory process and intense edema in the epithelium and subepithelial perivascular infiltration, the basement membrane of the epithelium ruptures and it herniates through the epithelium, and that is when the polyp forms. Now, the further classification of the CRS with nasal polyposis, as we have already discussed, there are three types: localized, diffuse, and the CRS without polyposis in some systemic disease. Now, let's see something about the localized chronic rhinosinusitis with nasal polyposis. So, basically, when we say the localized CRS with nasal polyposis, we mean the unilateral nasal polyp, and whenever there is a unilateral nasal polyp, it has to be seen with the suspicion, because it may be benign or it may be sometimes indicate the underlying tumor. So, benign entity is as usual the enterochoanal polyp, and sometimes whenever there is a unilateral polyposis, you have to suspect there is the underlying inverted papilloma or sinonasal malignancy. In these two cases, before we give medical treatment or before we plan anything further, we have to plan the biopsy to prove or to rule out the malignancy or the inverted papilloma, because the management in both the cases, the medical management have no role. A unilateral polyp may occur as a result of prior inflammatory event predisposing to sinus osteobstruction, hypoxia, and subsequent bacterial infection. So, whenever there is a ostia gets blocked because of the inflammation, the air cannot enter into the sinuses, which result into the hypoxia within the sinuses, and that becomes the favorable environment for the bacteria. So, there is a colonization of bacteria and further damage to the epithelium. Second type of CRS with nasal polyposis is a diffuse type. So, there are four possibilities here. One, as far as the etiology is concerned, the most acceptable theory behind this diffuse type of CRS with polyposis is a bacterial superantigen response. So, the most common organism which is thought to be responsible for this is the Staphylococcus aureus, although there are many other organisms which include the gram-positive, gram-negative, and the anaerobic organisms, but most common is the staphylococcal. Here, the Staphylococcus aureus is on the surface of the epithelium. It doesn't invade the epithelium, but it releases many toxins, enterotoxins especially, and they invade the epithelium and then they stimulate the inflammatory response. So, in response to the exotoxins, there will be many inflammatory cells come into the mucosa, and that again leads to the edema of the epithelium, the edema of the subepithelial region, and the immune response, which include the IL-5 mediated immune response and the IgE mediated immune response. The another theory which is many a times related to this condition is a fungal sensitization. So, whenever there is a fungal enters into the paranasal sinuses, again there is a stimulation of the allergic response or the inflammatory response, and the same things happen which we have discussed in the superantigen theory. Third is atopy, which is similar to that in the allergic rhinosinusitis, which we will discuss in the other lectures of the allergic rhinitis. And one more condition is the allergic aspirin exacerbated respiratory disease, something which is called as a Samter's triad. In this triad, the patients are suffering from the nasal polyposis, bronchial asthma, and insensitivity or hypersensitivity to the aspirin. Now here we can see the CT scan, a coronal cut of the nose and paranasal sinuses, and you can see that all sinuses, which includes the frontal sinus on both the sides, ethmoid sinus on both the sides, maxillary sinus on both the sides and the nasal cavity is completely occupied by the nasal polyposis, which leads to the opacity of all the sinuses and the nose. So most probably these are the findings which is consistent with the fungal rhinosinusitis and AERD. And the last type of the CRS with nasal polyposis is those conditions which are related to some of the systemic disease. The most common of these two include the Churg-Strauss syndrome, and in the Churg-Strauss syndrome, patient has nasal polyposis, and if we send the blood for the nuclear antibody, that is ANC, anti-nuclear positivity is there, and there is vasculitis. That means there is necrotizing inflammation of the vessel wall of the smaller caliber. So smaller caliber means arterioles, venules and capillaries. And cystic fibrosis, which is a congenital condition and most often present in the children, there will be diffuse polyposis and positive sweat test. So whenever you have a doubt that whenever you suspect any children with a possibility of cystic fibrosis, then you have to go for the sweat test, because the management of all this condition, you have to manage the systemic disease along with the treatment of the polyps and CRS. Now in detail we will see of some of the systemic disease when we discuss about the nasal polyposis in the upcoming slides. Now let's talk about the pathology of the CRS without nasal polyposis. So before discussing this, let's revise what happens in the CRS with polyposis. As we have discussed, there will be intense edema in the epithelium, there will be damage to the ciliary movement, and there will be inflammatory response into the subepithelial level. Now in contrast to that, here in the CRS without nasal polyposis, what we see is the fibrosis in the epithelium, basement membrane thickening, goblet cell hyperplasia, subepithelial edema, which is something which is similar to that seen in the CRS with polyp, and another thing seen which is mononuclear cell infiltration. So all these pathologies, pathological findings are absolutely different from what we see in those cases with nasal polyposis. And if you recall, in the nasal polyposis, CRS with nasal polyposis, basically the T helper type 2 cell was predominantly found, while here in CRS without nasal polyposis, as a type 1 type 1 helper cells are more predominantly involved, along with the interferon gamma. Now CRS without nasal polyposis again further classified into localized, diffuse and those with a systemic disease. CRS without nasal polyposis localized is also called as isolated sinus disease or sometimes the odontogenic disease. Here in this CT scan, which is a coronal cut of the nose and paranasal sinus, as you can see that there is an involvement of the frontal sinus of the right side and the maxillary sinus on the right side, and of course the ethmoid sinus, while on the left side the nasal cavity and all paranasal sinuses are absolutely clear. So whenever you see the isolated sinus disease, you have to suspect that there should be some anatomical variation which leads to the occurrence of the localized disease. Now, there is already a narrow ostia, and if there is an allergic or viral exacerbation, that means if the patient has already congenitally occurred anatomical variation over and above if patient suffers from the allergic rhinitis and there is a common cold, that means viral rhinosinusitis, that which leads to further obstruction of the sinus ostia, and when there is a further obstruction of sinus ostia, there will be collection of the mucus within the sinus, that is affected sinus, and there will be bacterial growth. In many of these cases, it have seen that there is a caries teeth on the same side. For example, if there is isolated maxillary sinus, then you may see the caries tooth, especially the premolar and molar on the affected upper jaw, and in those cases the treatment of the caries teeth is very important along with the treatment of the isolated sinusitis. Now CRS without nasal polyposis, diffuse. Bacterial colonization is the most acceptable theory for the pathophysiology of CRS without nasal polyposis, that is a diffuse variety. In most acceptable mechanism out of these two is one is the enterotoxin theory that we have already discussed in the CRS with polyposis diffuse variety, and another is a biofilm. Now biofilm is very important for the survival of a few of the pathogens. Now what the bacteria do in the biofilm is they make a polysaccharide coverage over the colony which the bacteria have formed. Now this polysaccharide coverage is not breached by the antibiotics, so the bacteria can survive for a longer period of time and they achieve a nutrition from that environment. Now these are some of the systemic disease in which the CRS without nasal polyposis occur. You can see that there is a cystic fibrosis, primary ciliary dyskinesia, there may be primary immunodeficiencies, some infectious disease like HIV, tuberculosis, sarcoidosis, granulomatosis with polyangiitis, also known as a vaginous granulomatosis, Churg-Strauss disease, some neoplastic conditions like hematological malignancies, sinonasal malignancies, iatrogenic conditions like atrophic rhinitis, chemotherapy or immunosuppression, and metabolic condition like malnutrition. In all these cases, the patients are more prone to develop the secondary chronic rhinosinusitis. Now let's talk about how to manage the cases of CRS. Now whenever the patient comes to you, when you suspect the CRS, that means based on the symptoms and signs, you have to manage the investigation and treatment. The timing of the investigation is very important. The day you suspect the CRS should not be the day when you advise the investigation. And most important two investigations for CRS is endoscopic evaluation, that means diagnostic nasal endoscopy, and another is a CT scan, as we have already discussed in the definition of the CRS. So based on the symptoms and nasal endoscopic finding, if you have diagnosed that it is a CRS, then you can start the medical treatment. And medical treatment, the mainstay of the medical treatment for CRS is a steroid. Now how to give the steroid, it depends upon the severity of the nasal polyposis or without nasal polyposis. You may give intranasal corticosteroids and systemic corticosteroids. Now the disadvantage of a systemic corticosteroid is there are more chances of side effects, systemic side effects. While the intranasal corticosteroid, there are many randomized controlled trials which have proved that intranasal corticosteroid is more effective than systemic corticosteroids in certain cases as far as the symptom control is concerned and as far as the reduction in the size of the nasal polyposis is concerned. But of course, in certain cases when the entire nasal cavity is occluded by the polyps, then intranasal corticosteroid has its limitation because it doesn't reach the osteometal complex area, the olfactory fossa, etc. So in those cases, along with the intranasal corticosteroid, you have to give the low dose systemic corticosteroid, for example prednisolone, sometimes for 5 to 10 days, and in severe cases you can give it up to 2 to 3 weeks. Now there are some antibiotics which you can give in cases of the CRS with or without polyposis, not as an antibiotic, but the main purpose is to immunomodulate and to reduce the inflammation, especially the IgE mediated inflammation and Ig5 mediated pathway. So these include the macrolides and doxycycline. Now for many years the macrolide has been successfully given in nasal polyposis cases, but from last few years it has been observed that cardiotoxicity is more. So now the more widely researched drug is doxycycline, and in many randomized controlled trials the doxycycline has been proved effective in reducing the symptom, in reducing the inflammation, as well as in reducing the size. There are novel immunomodulatory drugs which include the omalizumab, which is anti-IgE, and mepolizumab, which is anti-IL-5. So again, in many studies they have been proven very effective in reducing the inflammation symptoms as well as the size of the polyp. But the only drawback with this drug is, the main important 3 drawbacks of the drug are they are not as much cost effective as compared to the immunomodulatory antibiotic. They have to be given subcutaneously, and third, there are some side effects which hamper their current usage. Now, antihistamines are used only when you have proved the allergic phenomena in cases of CRS with or without polyposis by skin prick test or by skin prick test and RAST. The leukotriene inhibitors again should be used in cases when the CRS with polyposis are associated with the AERD or the asthma. And aspirin desensitization is very important for the cases which present with the polyposis, asthma and the aspirin sensitivity. In these cases, the patient are given the aspirin in a low doses initially, and gradually the dose of aspirin is escalated up to a level when at least a milligrams of the aspirin is well tolerated by the patient. So in that way, we sensitize the patient to the administration of aspirin. So after the medical treatment is given for 2 to 3 weeks, depending upon the severity, the functional endoscopic sinus surgery is done. And after functional endoscopic sinus surgery, the post-surgical medical management is even much important, or even have a same important as pre-operative medical treatment to prevent the recurrence. And one of the most important thing nowadays in the post-operative surgical medical management is high pressure steroid irrigation, so which can reach inside the sinus cavities, and it can prevent the further cycle of the inflammation and re-inflammation. So that's all about the chronic rhinosinusitis. Now let's discuss about the nasal polyposis. So according to the European position paper, the nasal polyposis is better termed as chronic rhinosinusitis with nasal polyposis, which we have already discussed. So the nasal polyposis or chronic rhinosinusitis with nasal polyposis is further defined as the inflammation of the nose and paranasal sinuses, which is associated with 2 or more of the following symptoms. These include the nasal blockage, nasal discharge, facial pain, and the olfactory dysfunction. So out of these 4 symptoms, patient should have at least 2 or more symptoms. Along with the symptom, there should be either endoscopic evidence of the CRS or polyp, or CT evidence of the polyp, or both. So endoscopic evidence of either mucopurulent discharge in the middle meatus, or edema, or mucosal obstruction primary in the middle meatus, and polyp. And CT changes include the mucosal changes within the osteomeatal complex and or the sinuses. Classification for the finding of the nasal polyposis that we have already discussed. It can be localized, which is a reactive polyp. It may be inflammatory or neoplastic. Then there may be a diffuse variety, and systemic. Now there are some systemic conditions which are often found with the cases of the nasal polyposis. The most common one is asthma. Now it has been seen that the 10% cases of asthma have nasal polyposis, and similarly the 10 to 11% cases of nasal polyposis also shows some mild to severe entity of the asthma. The second is the aspirin exacerbated respiratory disease, or simply the aspirin sensitivity. So here the patient will have a triad of nasal polyposis, asthma, and aspirin sensitivity. Cystic fibrosis, in that we have already discussed in brief. The primary ciliary dyskinesia. Now here it is a congenital recessive disease in which the ciliary movement are absolutely absent, or in some cases the ciliary movement is there, but it is not that much intense that it will propel the mucosa in the direction which it should be. One of the important syndrome within this term is the Carter-Jenner syndrome. In Carter-Jenner syndrome, because of this primary ciliary dyskinesia, patient will have a chronic rhinosinusitis. There will be retention of the mucus secretion within the lungs, so there will be bronchiectasis, and other than that, there will be nasal polyposis. In the Young syndrome, again patient will be having the rhinosinusitis, CRS with polyp, bronchiectasis, But in addition to these two things, patient also will have the azoospermia. Now this is the endoscopic picture of the right nasal cavity. You can see the septum here, the middle turbinate here, and the inferior turbinate here, and we can see the polyp. So it is a disease of the upper respiratory tract that form as an end result of the severe inflammation of the nose. As we have already discussed that there is a inflammatory responses in the subepithelium, and when there is an intense edema, there is a rupture in the basement membrane, and the subepithelial tissue, connective tissue, herniates through the epithelium, and that makes the polyp. So polyp arise in the presence of the inflammation that may be initiated by the number of factors, and the most important one is a dysregulated interaction between the sinus epithelium and the lymphoid system. The polyp form when the edematous connective tissue stroma rupture and herniates through the basement membrane, which we have already talked, and histologically it consists of a loose connective tissue. So when we take a cut section from the polyp, we will find that on the surface there will be pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Beneath the epithelium there will be absence of the basement membrane, and underneath that there will be loose connective tissue, inflammatory cells which include the neutrophil, lymphocytes and eosinophil. The eosinophils will predominate, and there will be a fluid, and it is covered by the pseudo-stratified columnar ciliated epithelium, as we have talked already. Now there are certain staging systems. There are many staging system for endoscopic staging system, but most widely accepted one is a Lund and Mackay. So according to this staging system, they have graded the polyp, edema, discharge, scarring and crusting from 0 to 1, where the 0 indicate the absence of the polyp, 1 indicate the polyps in the middle meatus only, and 2 indicate beyond the middle meatus. Similarly, for the edema, 0 is absent, 1 is mild, 2 is severe. For discharge, 0 means no discharge, 1 is clear or thin discharge, and 2 means thick purulent discharge. Scarring is, in scarring, 0 is absent, 1 is mild, 2 is severe. Crusting, 0 is absent, 1 is mild and 2 is severe. So you can see that if we perform the endoscopy and we have a total of minimum score will be 0 and maximum will be 10. So we can score in every patient from 0 to 10, and that decide the severity of the disease. Similarly, there are staging systems based on which the CRS can be scored, and one of the system is seen. If the for maxillary sinus 0, 1, 2, for all sinuses they can be scored from 0, 1 and 2. For osteometal complex it is either 0 or 2, and for the right and left we have to individually score. So again, the management of the CRS and nasal polyposis, specifically the management of the nasal polyposis, because of the recurrent nature of the disease, neither a surgery nor the medical treatment alone can guarantee a cure. So we give a combination of the medical treatment as well as the surgical treatment. And as we have already discussed in the management of the CRS, usually we give the pre-surgical medical treatment for a few weeks. That should be followed by the surgery, which is most of the time the functional endoscopic sinus surgery, and post-surgically also we should give the medical treatment for certain weeks. Now amongst the heading of medical treatment, the intranasal corticosteroid and systemic corticosteroids are the mainstay of the treatment. The macrolides we have already discussed, antihistamines and leukotriene inhibitors in those cases where the allergic inflammation has been proved, that is by the skin prick test and RAST. So if both the tests are negative, then probably there is no role of antihistaminics and leukotriene inhibitors. One more thing is leukotriene inhibitor is very important in cases where the nasal polyposis and CRS is associated with the bronchial asthma. And the mainstays of the surgical treatment for nasal polyposis is functional endoscopic sinus surgery. Thank you.